bit about me. My name is G.M Berrow, but you can call me Jillian, which is my actual name. I guess I just kind of decided to go with the cool author name, J.K. Rowling, and A.K. Yearling, or M.A. Larson, or any of those. So, let's get this started. There's me! This is me with a gummy, and a Qutlining, and a pony. Here we go. I've loved My Little Pony for my whole life. This is all my stuff from when I was a kid. Well, not all of it, but some of the stuff I had that my mom sent me pictures of. That's a really cool sleeping bag thing. And a bunch of ponies. See, there's like a shower. Why don't we have that now? I also really love books, obviously. I'm an eighth grade. I'm proud of it. Are you guys? Woo! So, it's amazing that it's my job now to write these. So, loving books and ponies, and here we go. So, these, or these, if you live here. Different covers. Soon these. Coming out in October. I don't know if you guys saw out there, there's a little table you can pre-order out there. Publisher came all the way here to do that. And look, Rainbow's really excited about it. I think she's gonna read them. I hope she does. A.K. Yearling wrote those, so, I mean. And next year, this! Which was really cool. Wish I could talk about it more, but obviously I can't. It's a Pinkie Pie episode, though. So, but I'm here to talk about books, so enough of that. Okay. Presentation. I just want to leave that out there. I learned how to use PowerPoint, so you can see that I started using GIFs and then I had to keep using them. Silly. All right. So, once I get an assignment to write a book, usually my publisher tells me next is Rainbow Dash or whatever character. I start coming up with a main idea so that I can pitch it to them. So, what I do to come up with an idea is I think about what I would want to know about that character. What things have happened to that character before, so I'm aware of everything that's happened to them, and that I'm not retelling the same story, but that it, perfectly is totally that character. And then I try to think of a topic that might be relevant, like, for example, going back to what I would want to know more about. In the Twilight book, I wanted to know more about Twilight's fears about becoming a princess, and what she was thinking about that. Because at the time when I had written that book, it was supposed to come out in between the seasons. So she had just become a princess, and no one really knew internally what was going on there. So in the book, she visits Princess Cadance to ask for some advice, and then lots of other things happen, but you'll have to read the book to find out. So I wanted to know about that. In Pinkie Pie's book, I wanted to know about her family and her relationship with them, because they're so different. So I got to explore that a little bit. In Rainbow Dashes, I thought it was really funny, the idea of her being a Daring Do fan and kind of fandom in general, obviously. So I thought it would be fun to explore that a little bit and sort of the midnight release party of the new Daring Do book and how excited she is and all that. In Applejack's book, which is not out here, oh, I misread it. Did I misread it? I wanted to know about Rarity's drive and her trying to become even more successful by passing on her knowledge to a younger pony and becoming a mentor, and how that sort of story would be interesting for her. Because she loves attention, so it's like the perfect plot for her, right? I mean, someone looking up to her and then looking up to her so much that they try to become her, and then she's upset about that because there's only one rarity, and that's why she's a rarity. Applejack's book, I wanted to know about her inner thoughts about honesty, and is she always honest with her friends, or are there some things she doesn't say to them if it might hurt their feelings? So I explored that a little bit. And then Fluttershy's book, which is coming out in the US in January. I wanted to explore kind of her kindness, pushing her to do things she might not be comfortable with, and she does it for her friends or people or ponies that she loves. So that's kind of my motivation for each of these stories. With this stories being relevant in today's world, a good example is the Pinkie Pie book. I sort of thought about housing foreclosure and businesses, kind of mom and pop businesses failing because of some big corporation. So I thought it might be interesting to have a story that kids could read about maybe a family going through a hard time, losing their family business or potentially losing their family business. So I thought with the Crystal Empire back, maybe that has some other effect that isn't good, and that is in the story. That plain rocks are no longer cool, and everybody wants gems, because the Crystal Empire is cool. So the rock farm is in trouble. So it's kind of a story about Pinkie Pie trying to help her family save their business. All right, so let's move on next. This is a lovely picture of my cat with a outlining board I did for the Pinkie Pie book. And she's got Pinkie Pie next to her. And on the right, it's me planning out scenes and trying to fit them in the correct order. So sometimes you have your basic idea of a story, but with me, I sort of, once I get that idea set and approved by the publisher, I like to just think of random scenes that might happen. I don't know if this is the most efficient way of doing things, but I'll think of, well, this is really echoey. I'll think of random scenes, and I know I want them in the book, but I don't know where they all fit together always. So I like to write them out. On the whiteboard you see there, I kind of have little character breakdowns at the bottom. You can see that on my character breakdowns, they're called Pinkie, Inky, Blinky, Sue, and Clyde, but that changed. The big yellow post-its are main things in the scene, and the little ones are funny little details that I thought of that might fit there. And I move those around a lot. So theoretically, each square is a chapter. Then on the right, you can see those little index cards I use. That's kind of, I think I was reordering a bunch of stuff I had written in my outline. Sometimes you just gotta shuffle things around. It takes me a couple tries, usually, to get things in the right order, which I feel like sounds weird, but it's just how I do it. Let's see. So I knew that I wanted to open on, in the books, having the character in basically a space of their own, alone. I think they all open that way, except for Pinkie Pie talks to Gummy, kind of that thing. I knew I wanted to have her in her room at Sugar Cube Corner, so you could really get just her alone, not interacting with the other ponies. Because the books are kind of like the show, but they're different in that you get more of an internal idea of what's going on in their heads or their motivations for things. I had Rarity at home putting on work while she waited for an important letter from the mentoring program. And I wanted Rainbow Dash alternately to be making a huge scene, so she kind of just flies into the bookstore at the book release party and crashes into this display and messes everything up, but it's awesome. So, had to do that. One tip about, what is this? Oh, there's my office. That's random in the slideshow. That's where I write. Oh wait, okay, go back. One thing I wanted to talk about is creating dialogue. When you start writing a scene, I think a lot of dialogue takes shape on its own, but one thing I like to do to come up, it helps me come up with scenes, is that I'll listen to family and friends, just listen to them having conversations, and I'll take something that one of them says and I'll think about how each character might react to that situation or something that a friend says. I think it's a good exercise to write for certain characters that already exist or ones you're creating. Just to know how they would react in a certain situation. And a lot of times I'll do that just in my head or randomly. And I come up with some really funny things. And it sparks other scenes that I might not have thought of before. So I don't totally advise eavesdropping on random strangers, because that might be weird, but I live in New York City, so I do that too, let's be honest. But I think it's kind of a cool trick. Let's see. Oh, one example I had written down about that is, I saw this, I don't know if I would call him a street performer, but this man on the street in New York City, and he puts up this display. I don't know how he hasn't gotten in trouble for it, but it's basically he has like 3 dogs, 2 cats, a couple of guinea pigs, a few birds, and he has this little like pyramid they sit on. It's really weird, but kind of interesting at the same time, like a lot of things in New York. And I was looking at it, and I was imagining what Fluttershy would have to say to that guy about kind of making these animals work on a dirty New York City street. I think she actually might raise her voice for that one, or do some sort of stare. So that sort of inspired me for something in Fluttershy's book, which I cannot reveal, but it's just a good example of how you kind of look around and just get inspiration from anywhere. All right. Kind of jumping around on my own plan. All right. So when I have all those scenes and details kind of organized, I start to write a 3-act outline, which is similar to the TV show, which is why I do it that way. A lot of other books I worked on, I wrote a chapter-by-chapter outline, but I like to do the 3-act structure because it makes it more like the TV show. So you get the right beats where it kind of, you know, you get a little shocking moment a third of the way in, and then 2/3 of the way in, and you get your resolution. I think it was good practice, actually, for writing my episode, because it was the same type of thing. And I think that's a really good way if you're trying to write a story, a pony story, or any story. It's just a very good TV-like structure. So when I do the outline, I turn it in. It always varies in length, too. Sometimes I get really detailed and I'll add in the dialogue I thought of while listening to the bus driver. Or, you know, if it just adds to the scene, I add in little dialogue bits. But it really varies. And then I turn it in, and then when I get the thumbs up from my editor and from Hasbro, it's time to write the first draft. already done a lot of work by that point. So the first draft, I usually I write by hand on a notebook. Like the one on the left. I actually have pony notebooks, my mom bought them for me. It's kind of hilarious. But a lot of times I use just a yellow legal pad. And then I start just going for it based on my outline. And I think writing it down on paper really helps me get it out, not get stuck, even though I do get stuck sometimes. There's just something about sitting in front of a computer that, for one, is really distracting because you can go on any website you want. You know, first it starts out as research, and then you're like 20 minutes later looking at something really random, and you don't know how you got there, and then you've written nothing. So I think writing by hand is really great. Also, you don't need a charger for that. Take it anywhere. All you need is ink and paper and your brain. And then when you type it up, it kind of edits it for you a little bit because it's sort of a draft and a half. And you know, you'll notice that a lot of stuff you wrote down probably wasn't that good. But that you got to get that stuff out to get the good stuff. So. And also this middle picture, that's me watching an episode while writing, which is important for research purposes, but I think I was kidding myself a little bit there. Really, you should watch it and then I'm working. And then, let's see. Oh, so when that gets turned in, the first draft, this is supposed to be my editor saying this. She always has revisions for me, you know, certain things that aren't working, and that's just part of the process. So, of course, I have to go back. This is what, you can't really see it on there, but this is what it looks like to do track changes. So, I think this is good to do for yourself, too, but this is how they do it in publishing. See the different colors? The one on the right is just all my edits, but this one has different editors. They say comments on the side. And then when you delete something, you can see what's been deleted. So if an editor makes a change that I don't particularly agree with, I can sort of have a conversation about it and either justify what I originally thought, or if she has a question about a character, and I'll say, no, this character doesn't do that, or has this relative, I might have some knowledge that she doesn't, and vice versa. So we can have a conversation and decide about it. And then it shows everything in color that I've added in. So these are my tips on revising. A lot of people say this, but you should cut everything you can. It's really easy to have a lot of superfluous stuff in there. Even when I read stuff I've written down that's way done, I still see stuff I could have cut more. So you should be really ruthless if you can. And your editor should help with that, but if you don't have one, do your best to cut everything. They say kill your darlings. It's a famous writing phrase. So sometimes writers get really attached to certain things that they think, you know, this is so funny, this scene is so adorable. Oh, look at Speedy Belle here. No, if it's not working in the scene and it's dragging on, you've got to cut it. And just use it later. I just usually copy paste and keep an open document. That way I don't feel like I've gotten rid of it completely. It's kind of like trying to go through an old box of mementos or something. If you put something to the side, I'm just going to keep it over here for now. And then you kind of forget about it. So that's what I do. And then read it out loud to yourself or to someone else. And it's a pretty good test for if it's good. Or if a parent could read it to their child at bedtime. And yes, that's a good test. Or just do this. That's what I do. I don't do any others. even in the book. I usually look like this. And then she's like, cool. Well, that's what we hope. If she doesn't make me do more revisions, which can happen, but this is what I hope for. So then, at the end of these books, I have to do the activity pages, which I don't know if a lot of people know that I write those too, but they're kind of fun. These are some of my favorite ones. You can't really read it, but this pink one is from the Pinkie Pie book, and it's a rock and field study. So it prompts you to go out in your backyard and find cool rocks and draw them and give them names, and I think Maud would approve of it. And there's also this Wonderbolts test here from the Rainbow Dash book, which I was trying to think of a way that it wasn't just like a little puzzle or something. So I thought, I really want to get people up and moving and playing around. So it's kind of I think I called it like something about your wingspan, but it's jumping jacks, and you're supposed to make a little check mark when you finish with certain numbers. And there's one where you can do races, and then there's this rarity one, where you design a cover of the magazine Verity Fair. And 9 to 12 months later, books are born. Aww, thank you. So, a few things you want to remember if you want to be an author. Don't get discouraged if somebody says something bad about your work, because that's always going to happen. You might get good reviews too, and I think you should take all of them, even the good ones, with a grain of salt. Because, you know, they're just opinions, and they are important to, you know, gauge people's reactions in a way so that you can get better. Because any author that says that, oh, I'm fine how I am, is not willing to learn, and I think that's a big mistake. I think everyone is constantly learning. I know I am. So, try not to get too upset. And just, you know, keep on reading and writing. And that's the number one tip, is that don't just keep writing, you need to be reading too. And you need to read things that you like and things that you want to sound like, so that you learn how it's done. And theoretically, you enjoy reading if you're an author. Anyways, I mean, I know I love to read. And I actually find that when I read in the morning a little bit before I start working, that my writing is much better, and I feel more inspired by people who I look up to. Of course, lean on your friends and family for support, and, you know, you just need someone to give you a little ego boost, pat on the back. I know my mom reads all of my books before I turn them in. Even if it's really late at night, I'll call her up and she'll answer the phone, which is so nice of her. She doesn't have to do that, but she reads through them and gives me her honest opinion. And sometimes I go, I don't care, but I do care. So it's really nice if you have someone to do that. Because even though work is important, pleasure is magic. There's me with my best friends. Thought it'd be nice to meet them up there. They're a little stretched out. Yay! Yay! I think this is it. Yeah. And there's Rainbow Dash in the book. Just really excited. I think I went through that really fast, because it was my first time giving a presentation, other than in school, which has been a while. So, I think now we're going to do sort of a Q&A. If anybody has any questions for me?
Okay, the main six are already quite fleshed out characters through the episodes of the show, but as you said, there are still things that we want to know about. Would you consider writing books for characters that we don't know so much about, such as Discord or the Film Clan Brothers?
So you're asking if I would write books about the other characters, like Discord or the Flynn Brothers. I would love to. I'm actually working on Celestia and Luna books right now, which is cool. But I would love to expand more out. I think that just remains to be seen. It's kind of up to the publisher. But if you guys want that, I mean, let them know.
Sometimes I like to write fan fiction, well, not often, because I don't have any ideas. But when I do, I like to write like random quotes from some of the characters whilst planning.
Sorry, I can barely hear.
I'll start from here. Sometimes I write fan fiction.
Oh, that's better.
Not often, but I do. And when I do, I like to write random quotes from some of the characters whilst planning. Do you reckon does that work, do you think?
Yeah, I do that too. I think it definitely works, because if you can build a scene around it, or you have something that seems really in character that you want them to say, I don't see why that's bad.
Yeah, it often does happen with me.
I think that's a good thing to do.
Will you be working in any other book projects apart from Pony?
I have a book that I'm working on right now, yes, that has nothing to do with Pony. So, I'm not sure when anyone will get to see that, but I'm working on one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next time.
I was wondering about your influences for what you want to read, and as you mentioned about reading something before starting to write. Would you have a particular area or particular genre of books that you want to keep as just influences for that project you're working on at the moment? Or would it just be anything you're interested in at the moment? So would you have books that you read for leisure and books that you read for work? Or would it be one of those?
I read a wide range of genres. I really like science fiction. There's a really cool book that I read recently called Ready Player One. It's really good, I recommend it. I'm also in a book club, so I read a lot of different types of books. But as far as influences, for my current project that isn't Pony, I would say my biggest influence is an author called Gail Carson Levine. She writes sort of fairy tales, kind of in a way, but they're a little bit sassy. Sort of a sassy fairy tale. Maybe a little more serious than some other things I've done. But it's still sort of taking shape. I guess Roald Dahl was really big for me when I was a kid, so I think he's a big influence. And, I mean, I love J.K. Rowling, so if I could ever write anything like that, I think I would be pleased as much. Thanks.
Okay. You mentioned you had a couple of favorite authors. Which are they?
Sort of just said that.
Yeah.
There's an author called Norman Spinrad that I really like. He does science fiction. It's more of for adults. It's not really kid stuff. J.K. Rowling, always great. Really should come up with a list to say, because every time I get this question, I always draw a blank, but there are tons of favorite authors. Who else?
And aside of science fiction, any other genres that spring to mind as favorites? Or?
I like historical fiction a lot, and I actually read a lot of nonfiction too. I read everything actually. I think that's a good thing to do, is to not stick to one genre. Keep your mind open and
Thank you for the answer.
Hi.
Which book is your favorite of those you write?
Oh, my favorite that I've written?
Yeah, things you like and you wrote.
The pony boats. I think my favorite one is Rarities. She was really fun to write. So.
Thank you, and it is from the time.
Oh,
Real honour to get speaking with you, Eugene. I don't expect I'm sure you weren't expecting a question from Boris Johnson. As a qualified academic in classics, obviously I've become very aware of this great attachment that the community and the writing staff throughout the franchise have had to classical literature and mythology. Would you say, we had talks that others mentioned by folk papers, other and sympathans, as you know. What I wonder is, do you feel there's been an influence of those things in your works, or if not, do you hope there will be in future?
I definitely hope there will be. I mean, mythology is kind of woven into this whole world that has been created. So I don't know that I've brought anything new from mythology into my books. I think I've used some of the things already available, but there were a few things I was pitching for the show that included some new mythological creatures. So I would love to do that. I think it's really neat, actually. So yes. Thank you.
So can anyone hear me loud and clear? So yeah, Julian, I've got a question regarding how characters like Pinkie Pie gets interpreted in writing, and because she does a lot of visual gags. Yeah, I was wondering how it's done, especially in terms of the gags where it involves Pinkie Pie breaking the laws of physics. And I don't want to sound a bit too sciencey when it comes to the question. But yeah, how do you write those gags that Pinkie Pie does?
That is a bit of a challenge. I think I have a part where she sort of all of a sudden has all these. She has springs on her feet. She's got these springy shoes, and I think another character is like, where did that come from? And then in the actual text it says like, it seemed to come from nowhere, but it was just Pinkie Pie. You know, it is kind of difficult because a lot of her stuff is very sight gag type of thing. But in the Pinkie Pie text as well, I use a lot of exclamation points, much more than any of the other books. I sort of tried to do that in each book, is kind of use words that I thought would apply to that. So in the Rarity book, it's kind of like big words, flowery, ridiculous language, even when she isn't speaking, and just when it's describing things. And I think in Pinkie Pie, I tried to make it sort of silly words and lots of exclamation points and just random stuff. So that was my way of doing it.
Ah, I see. Yeah, it's very interesting seeing how that's done. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Burrows.
Hi.
My ambition is to become a cartoon writer, and I've written so many letters and emails to different companies such as Disney and EGGHEAD, and unfortunately they're either being rejected or they haven't responded. My question is, how did you manage to get involved with Hasbro to write your books?
It's actually kind of interesting because I wanted to be a television writer. That's what I went to university for. Actually for writing for television, specifically children's television. So I took a little bit of a detour after college, sort of. I started working in live TV production because it was in line with what I wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get to where I wanted to go, but I just kind of took every opportunity that came my way. And kept writing for myself to practice. And then when I got an opportunity to write a story outline for a book, I was ready. I didn't really know what I was doing with the books at first because I had intended to write TV, but it was for Glee. Have you heard of Glee?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did these books for the TV show Glee, kind of learning as I went. And I basically just got a chance and I was ready to go. It was more like a friend of a friend kind of thing, which I think happens with a lot of people, which I think is why it's important to always just keep practicing and taking opportunities that you might not know will lead to that eventually. It's sort of a stepping stone thing. You never know who you're going to meet on one job, who's going to introduce you to someone else on another job, who's going to introduce you to someone they know at Aspen. You know, it's kind of like that. And I took a lot of work that had nothing to do with TV writing. I mean, I was a copywriter for Living Social. Have you heard of that website? It's like coupons. So I wrote copy for them. Every day I'd get an assignment, you know, write about this tanning salon and make it creative and interesting. It was tough, and it didn't pay well or anything, but it was good because one of the things was that I had to make a lot of puns, which of course is perfect for me and My Little Pony. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't turn down things because they're not exactly the thing that you want. Because it could lead to something else and then you'll be ready when the time comes.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Did you write any of your own stories when you were a kid?
I did. I wrote a lot of stories when I was a kid. I actually just found a bunch. When I was home last time, I found a big box with all these notebooks. I was going to put them in my slideshow. I had some pictures of my stories when I was a kid. They're really funny, but I got kind of embarrassed. But I think it's really cool when kids write stories, and I think it gets you started and using your imagination. And do you write stories? You like to write? That's awesome.
All right, well, yeah, I was wondering, yeah, like I was saying, I was wondering, I'm kind of like a little bit amateur writing, and have you ever, when you try to write something, when you have that certainty in your mind and you know how that happens, but for some reason you just can't write it down, so if you have dealt with this kind of problem, how do you usually deal with those?
I mean, that is the tough part of writing, I would say. I guess I just try to take a stab at it and see where it goes. I mean, like I said before, I'll get a notebook and a pen, and I'll sit down and I'll just, no pressure, try to come up with something and see how it takes shape. A lot of times things turn out differently than they seemed like they were going to turn out in my head. So sometimes it's better, actually. I would say just try. Just try and see what happens.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Hi. You see, my question is, you see, I'm currently writing my own fanfic on film fiction, and currently though, I don't feel that inspired to continue, and I'm not really sure if I have an ability to continue it, and I want to ask you, do you have any advice for anyone who is in that situation?
Whenever I feel like I don't have an idea, I try to think of a story that I love already, a movie or a book or anything, and I try to think of a new way of telling it. Because there are only so many, story structures. I think there's like 5 or something. There's like fish out of water story. There's a couple different ones. So, I don't know. What's your favorite movie?
It's a good question, really. I'm thinking. I don't really know. I've seen a lot of films and I can't really
Okay, well, if you think of one that you really like, and then try to sort of plug in the different elements to it, the elements of harmony, and then you might come up with something really cool. With the Rarity book, I sort of thought about the movie All About Eve, where there's this actress, and then this young actress sort of tries to become her. And that inspired me to write that story. It wasn't exactly like the story, but I think that's a good way to get started on something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jillian.
Hi.
Just thought I'd ask, have you ever met any of the writers for the show and taken inspiration from the way they write the episodes?
I've met a lot of the writers, actually, and become good friends with them at the convention. They're all really nice people. I definitely take inspiration from them. I don't know what specifically, like, their stories. I mean, I try to come up with my own original stories for the books and the show and everything, but I take inspiration from the way they work and their body of work. I mean, I definitely respect Mitch and Megan and all those people, and it's great. I had never met Dave Polsky before this convention, and he's so nice and really funny. So I definitely think it's a really good team, and I look up to all of them quite a lot.
Thank you.
Just thought to ask, the books that you've made so far, are you happy with the length of them? Or would you consider at a later stage maybe making a longer book that could probably potentially become a movie as well?
I would love to do a much longer book. The pony books are kind of limited just because they're supposed to be a little shorter, because they are supposed to be for young readers who are just starting to learn to read chapter books. So I can appreciate that, but I think it would be really, really cool to write a much longer book and have it made into a film. That's the dream.
Hi. Could you say a few words about how you keep continuity with the show? Because from what we understand from the presentation, there's quite a lead time from you write the thing until it becomes a book. And in the meantime, it could be that the show has contradicted some details you wrote down. So do you get to see screenplays of upcoming episodes in advance? Or how much interaction between the writers of different media are there?
I do actually get to read all the scripts before they come out, so that wasn't established right away, but I've developed a good system, I think, with everyone, me being in the loop, as far as that goes. So earlier on, I think there were a couple things that were missed that didn't need to be, but I think we worked it out. I definitely ask the writers sometimes about certain details. I try not to bother them with too much though, because I think everything as far as continuity goes can be seen in the show and in the scripts. So you know, it's a lot to remember, but I think keeping continuity is important. And I try to choose a point at which each book should be, kind of that story should happen. There are certainly callbacks to the show in the books, and a few little predictions in them. Because in the Pinkie Pie book, there's a part where I mentioned that she has another sister back at the farm. And when that first came out, everyone was freaking out, thinking I invented a third sister, but I knew about Maud Pie, so yeah, that was just one of those little things that I put in there to make sure it was correct with continuity.
Thank you.
Hello. When you initially started writing the My Little Pony books, were you aware of the size of the fandom or indeed the intensity of it, or has it been a bit of a pleasant surprise?
When I first started, I didn't know. I just started writing the Twilight Sparkle book, and I was at my publisher's office doing something, I go in from time to time, not too often, but I had walked by the desk of a friend of mine, another editor, and she's kind of this southern kind of Applejack girl, and she said to me, "Girl, have you heard about the brownies?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then she explained to me, and I thought it was so cool. Because I started researching it, and then I actually went to BronyCon in New Jersey, so undercover. No one knew who I was, but I was watching it. It was very interesting, and I thought it was really, really unique and really wonderful that so many people have, you know, gotten so much joy out of this and found friends, and that's what it's about. So that's so cool, and I think it's the most unique, wonderful fandom there has ever been. So I'm pleasantly surprised. Thank you.
Hiya. This is partly based on what someone else has told me, because my life is so busy, and I've been meaning to read the books, and I bought 3 of them the week before, and I've been trying to read them, but I'm still reading, so I'm grudging. But one of my friends who's with me is a much faster reader, has read the Rarity one, and they've also read the Twilight one, which is the early one. Now what she told me is that, in her opinion, there was a slight tonal shift in terms of the Twilight one being written for very, very young children, whereas by the time it got to the Rarity one, she said that obviously it's not aimed at like adults or anything, but aimed at perhaps sort of the tween sort of market and sort of, you know, so I was wondering, A, that could have been just a pure coincidence or just that particular novel, or I was curious whether, based upon sort of the impact of, you know, fandom, based upon perhaps advice you're getting from Hasbro about writing, whether as you've gone on, you've shifted it to be from very, very young children to slightly older children, and following on from that, would there be any possibility of having a novel that was aimed at, you know, sort of young teenagers sort of in the future?
I think it's actually kind of a combination of both of those things. I think I knew I wanted the first one to be a little bit more storybook-like, kind of like the first episode of the show where they explain about Nightmare Moon and all of that, and there's a storybook. So I think the beginning of it is kind of once upon a time there was a princess, and I intended it for it to be like that. But then I think I also kind of I learned and grew, and I decided that I could make it a little bit tonally more like the show and have it still be good. So, what was the second part of the question?
Oh, it was just that, based upon perhaps that tonalship we've already seen in terms of whether there be a possibility of again, no one in the Brony family is asking for 18-rated, you know, official books, but something that is aimed at sort of young teenagers would be quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's potential for that. It's out of my hands, really. I can make suggestions and all of that, but I would love to. I pitch them new ideas all the time, so we'll see what sticks. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi again. How did it feel when they asked you to work in season 5 and will you be working in more episodes?
What was the first part of that?
How did it feel when they asked you to work on season 5?
Amazing. I mean, it was a dream realized for me. I went to university for television writing. I always wanted to do that. So it was a really big deal for me, and really special. I mean, to have Megan, who is someone I look up to, ask me to do that. And I felt on top of the world. I still do. It's really cool. I can hardly wait to see it, you know? And I hope that there will be more. But only time will tell about that.
Thanks.
Thank you.